Hello everyone, my name's Caleb. I'm sure y'all know me because Catherine has mentioned my name and I've been in a couple of the vlogs, probably harassing Catherine while she was wrapping Christmas gifts.
Check out the video right here.
But today, Catherine wanted me to start off this intro because I'm joining her in recapping the books that we read in 2022. And let me just give a disclaimer in defense for myself. I didn't read nearly as much as Catherine, mainly because I was staring at
He's a full-time
Anki.
student.
I read more from Anki than I did from books, unfortunately. But yeah, so today we're just gonna be briefly going through what books we read, giving a quick synopsis, rating, and why. That is what Catherine instructed me while I was in the bathroom getting ready. She said, that's what we're doing, so we're gonna do it. Happy wife, happy life.
And the way we're gonna do it, since I read more books than Caleb, I'm gonna start with 2 books. Every 2 books is, after that, it'll be his turn so that we end at the same time. And I'm not just talking the whole time. Sound good? So without further ado, here is our books we read in 2022 CM Squared edition.
Start the music.
To preface, if you hear like an annoying buzzing noise in the background, just ignore that. It's our fridge. And I'm recording audio on my phone instead in hopes that it drowns it out. But we will see.
It's our freezer.
It's our freezer. And
We don't know why it's doing that.
And maintenance isn't here today because it's Saturday, so. Anyways, let's begin. All right, to start off strong, of course, we have a cheesy rom-com. This is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is when I was in my Book of the Month era. I kind of recommend Book of the Month, but I also don't because they don't always give you the best options for each month. But anyways, this book, from what I remember, is an enemies to lovers trope. You have Adam Carlson, I think that's his name. Yep.
You probably don't need to give names to the characters.
You have Adam and, I want to get their names right. Adam and Olive. Adam is a PhD. Olive is a PhD student, and Adam like works in
research assistant.
No, he's like a head. He's like a professor or whatever.
Oh.
And they have an enemies to lovers, and I really like this book because the banter and the tension were there. It was really enjoyable to read. This book is what got me back into like rom-coms in the beginning of the year. So I really appreciate this book. And again, the author is just really good at writing. And it's not like, it is cheesy, but it's not like super cheesy. Like the dialogue is still very real. Anyways, I rated this book a 4 out of 5 for those reasons. And yeah, that was my first book of 2022. Okay, second book I read in 2022 is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book was gifted to me by Amy, so Amy, if you're watching this, thank you very much. And I was really hyped to read this book, honestly, because I heard really good things about it. Lots of people had read it. Also, the cover is just really dope. I remember one time me and Caleb found this out of Barnes & Noble, and we were both like, whoa, that's a really cool book. This is like a magical realism book. It's about a girl who is in this magical library, and she's at a really low point in her life, but she enters this library where each book is a different outcome of what could have been her life if decisions were made differently. So it's just a take on how little decisions affect your life. It was an interesting plot. I really liked it. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. I know that's not high, that's like mid, but I still enjoyed reading it. I think it just got really slow at one point and really repetitive.
Yeah, I remember you weren't that satisfied with it.
Yeah, I wasn't that satisfied with the ending of the book too, but I think that's the point. Also, the main character was a little flat. Like, her, I don't know, I just didn't like her as a character that much. Still an interesting read though, so that's my take on that.
The first book I read in 2022, which is pretty funny, I didn't start, I think, until like the end of the spring. This book, Catherine will put an image up, is called 12 Cases. It is a book that was gifted to me by my mom. Also, excuse me if I cough, I have a little head cold right now. It is written by Dr. Miralak, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's an MD, PhD, specialized in psychiatry, and he just did short stories of 12 patients that he encountered as a psychiatrist, some of them inpatient, some of them outpatient. And they were just interesting stories, and it kind of shed a little light on like a very mysterious medical field that a lot of people are still uncomfortable with. Made it more tangible, if you will, kind of grounded a lot of beliefs about psychiatric care, and put it in a nice little neat story. So I liked it. I'm interested in psychiatry at the moment, subject to change, but that book was nice. There were some interesting stories in it. It helped me learn a little bit more about the field. It's like to be a psychiatrist. I give that book, it's a nonfiction book, short stories. I enjoyed it. I would just say a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 because some of the stories weren't that interesting. If I'm being all that honest, I felt like for some of them he was kind of reaching for interesting stories when it wasn't that interesting. It seemed like a pretty routine patient. So that's why I give it a 4 out of 5.
Next, out of the books I read, this is another Book of the Month book, and it's Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen Ho. This book was a really quick read. It was a really wholesome read. It's basically about 2 girls who are friends, and it takes you along their lifespan, like years of friendship, and how sometimes they're talking, sometimes they're not. And it goes back and forth between future, past, and present, which I really liked because you got to see how their friendship changed over time, but not sequentially, which was really cool. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed reading it. Just the way it talked about female friendships was very near and dear to me because I love my female friendships and they hold a special place in my heart. And also it's 2 Asian characters, which is always nice to see some representation. I really like the point of view of both of them in the book. And you could see like how the other friend was viewing the other friend and vice versa. It was just really good. I really enjoyed it. If you want a book about friendships, it's not about love, I recommend this one, Fiona and Jane. Next, I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. And Caleb actually picked this up at Second and Charles a while ago. And he was gonna read it before I did, but then I ended up reading it first. He picked this book out because he had heard such great reviews about it.
Via TikTok. Book Talk.
Yeah. And it's Hank Green, and you know, when you think Hank Green, you're like, oh, it's John Green's brother. It's gonna be a great book. A lot of people think that, but I personally did not actually. This book is about, I don't even know how to explain what this book is about. It is about a girl. She is on this mission. She becomes viral on YouTube because she discovers the Carl, and everything in this story and mission revolves around the mysterious Carl. These mysterious statues just keep appearing in different cities in America, and she is like the first one to discover one of them. So she goes viral on YouTube, and the book takes off from there. And it sounds like a really interesting plot, and it was, but I feel like to me, it just went nowhere. And also, the character to me was also just so unlikable. But I think she was supposed to be, and I just don't think I like unlikable main characters, even if that's the purpose of them. Like, I ended up still giving it a 3 out of 5 because Hank Green is still a good writer. It was well written. I was able to finish the book. Like, I didn't DNF it, which is a good sign. And there's a second book, but I don't know if I'm ever gonna read it. But the book does end in a cliffhanger, so I just may never know.
We can do this one together.
Oh yeah, I didn't read this in 2022, but I read it the year before.
This book is called Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. Very popular book. Blew up probably like summer of 2021. That's when a lot of people were buying it. And then you'd see it at like the front of all bookstores for like the next year.
And at H Mart, you would see like the screen in the food court show. That's how I discovered this book.
Oh yeah, we saw it in H Mart being advertised in one of their little advertisement TVs, which is kind of funny, in like the food court.
Yeah.
It is a memoir just about her life, about her relationship with her mother. Most of the book is about that because it is a journey on dealing with her mother getting diagnosed with cancer, how that affects her, and it gives her an opportunity to reflect on her relationship with her mother that was kind of estranged at the time in which she found out that her mother had cancer. It also tells us a lot about her upbringing, a little bit more about her father. She's also in a band called Japanese Breakfast. So it tells a little bit about her blossoming musician's career, which I think is very interesting. I would give this book like probably a 4.5 out of 5. Very readable. The only reason I give off that half point is because it was so descriptive, and descriptive writing to me, like, I love it to a certain point. When I've been reading about the description of making a certain dish for like 3 pages, I get a little bit tired. And I felt like at some points during this book, I kind of got lost in the details. Food specifically. It talks a lot about Korean cuisine, which I love Korean food, and I thought it was interesting to see how she was able to bring out like the aromas, the tastes of different Korean cuisine, even some that I had never tried before. At certain points, I got lost in the details. But besides that, I really like this book. She has a very powerful story. She's a very powerful writer. 4.5 out of 5.
I don't care about what I think. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I love this book. This is probably one of my top 10 books. Probably top 5 nonfiction books. Like, highly recommend. All right, next we have the summer of rom-coms for Catherine. This is when I was deep in my rom-com phase. Specifically, yeah. Specifically books that gave me like summer rom-com vibes. And this happened because I started watching Haley Fan more. and she just gave me a whole like archive of books I need to read. So this is Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I've already talked about this book before on my channel, but I loved this book. It is a quick read. Also, the cover art is beautiful. But it's basically about a famous guy, Gabe and Chani. She's a journalist, and it gave fan fiction vibes, but in the best way. She was in charge of interviewing him at some portion of her life. She did the interview. She was able to spend a whole weekend with him and like see the life of a celebrity, and they also connected romantically. But something happened. I'm not gonna spoil what happened, and you don't find out exactly what led to their downfall until towards the end of the book. But the book is basically, it goes back and forth, present and past. And in the past, that's when she was doing the original interview. In the present, she had gone 10 years without speaking to him. I think it's 10 years. And so that's what the story is about. I gave this book, I think I gave it a 5 out of 5. Let me double check.
She did.
I did. 5 out of 5. And recently on TikTok, a lot of people have been talking about Andrew Garfield and that one journalist, Amelia, who is the host of the chicken shop date videos.
I only ever want to see you.
What?
That's not the end of the sentence.
And everyone is saying if you want to read a rom-com that's similar to what you're watching in real life of them two, this is the book. And now that I've heard that on TikTok, I can definitely see it and I recommend. Especially if you were a girl who read fanfics.
We're rooting for you, Andrew and
Amelia.
We are rooting for you.
I'd love to see it. Next we have Emily Henry. This is the first Emily Henry book I had read, even though it's her most recent one. I just heard so much about this one. And I really wanted to read it because, you know, book lovers, it's enticing. I'm a book lover. I want to read about two people who are book lovers. It's not really about two people who are book lovers. It's about two people who are publishers or editors. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5.
Okay.
It was good, but honestly, I think I want to change it to a 4 out of 5 because I can't really remember why I liked it. I'm sure it was well written. I'm sure there was good chemistry.
What was the romantic trope in it?
The romantic trope, I'm trying to refresh by looking at the summary. This is definitely frenemies to lovers type
She's
book.
guessing.
And I think the only issue I have with this book, from what I remember, is that it was drawn out at some point. Like it's a long book. It's 370 pages. No, it's 379 pages, which for me is a long rom-com. Rom-coms to me are just quick reads. I think this was a little drawn out, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. But I still really enjoyed it. It had good chemistry. I really like Emily Henry's writing because the dialogue feels real. It doesn't feel like cringy. Like it's good.
Oh my gosh, I get to talk.
I feel like you should talk about both of these back to back.
Yes, okay. Next books for me. These two books, The Circle and The Every. You may be familiar with this book if you went to college circa like 2015 to 2018. Both of these books, this is the sequel. This is the first book. It is very much a modern dystopian book. You have a main character who finds herself in this new company, and things are not as perfect as they seem with advancing technology. Kind of delves into a lot of themes that honestly are relevant today and becoming more relevant because it is a little bit futuristic. Kind of predicts things that could come with modern society as we keep advancing and advancing. I literally could not put it down. I finished it in like a couple of days, and that was during school. So that says a lot that I wanted to focus on this rather than my studies. I loved it so much. 5 out of 5. A lot of people don't like this book at all, but I just loved it. And this book by extension was also amazing. It was a continuation of the same story, but from another point of view and more into the future. 4.5 out of 5. It was a little bit longer. I don't know if you can tell, it's a little bit thicker. I felt like this one got a little bit slow at times, but both amazing books, amazing author. I'm looking forward to reading more by Dave Eggers.
Next up for me, one last summer rom-com book. This is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now this was a 5 out of 5. I do not know why. I feel like the books are probably similar, but there was just something about these two characters that I loved a lot. This is about Augustus Everett and January Andrews. They're not really enemies to lovers. They're just opposite, like polar opposites to lovers. And they're both staying in beach houses that are right next to each other. They're both like famous authors. They're both hitting writer's block. She is a rom-com writer and he is like a literary fiction realist writer. Like he just writes more about like sad stories. So they're just polar opposite writing styles. Start helping each other out during that summer to get through their writer's block. And the one rule they make is that we're not gonna fall in love. This book is what solidified for me that I really enjoyed Emily Henry's writing, and I'm really excited for her future books to come because I know she has another one coming out next summer, I think. 5 out of 5. That's all I gotta say. And now we have another 5-star read. I read this so fast. I feel like this is one of the most talked about books.
You read this in a day.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the most talked about books in 2022. I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Can we just appreciate the cover? Beautiful cover. So I picked this up at Barnes & Noble literally 2 days after it had come out, and I ended up loving it. I literally could not put it down. As Caleb said, I read it in less than 24 hours, and I was just hooked from the get-go. It was shocking, it was sad, but it was also humorous, and she has such a good voice in this book. Like, her writing to me was just it was to the point, but also like...
Genuine.
Yeah, yes. I really enjoyed it. A lot of people have. This book has great reviews. 5 out of 5. Again, this is probably top 5 in my nonfiction books I've ever read.
All right, next book for me, right after The Circle and the Every, is The Sympathizer. This is something that should be noted. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize.
Big deal right there.
The author is Viet Thanh Nguyen. It is about this man. He's communist and he is actually a spy in the book, and he's working for a general in Saigon. Takes you through his experience having to flee Vietnam when the communists invaded Saigon and the war ended. It continues his spy story in America. It's a very interesting book. It honestly is so deep that I would struggle to be able to summarize all the themes it touches on. A lot of politics, it touches on a lot of philosophy, it touches on ethics, things like that, and it's so well written. This book, from what I can remember, it is a bit of a long read. One thing about this book is that I would read a sentence and I would have to stop and put the book down and be like, that was so beautifully said. This gives a refugee who was able to see both sides a voice. And even though it's historical fiction, it is still very accurate, well-researched, and well-written. 5 out of 5.
Okay, I read this book too. I'm not gonna talk about the summary because Caleb just did. I'm gonna talk about it because I read more than half of it and then I DNF'd it. And that's why I want to talk about it. I gave this book a 2 out of 5. Caleb loved it. I get why he loves it. I think we just have different book tastes. As you can tell from the books we're talking about, you can tell we have different book tastes. I enjoyed the plot. I get why it was so enticing. It's a very interesting like world building they did there, and the message it has about real life consumerism is very accurate and true. But it was just so repetitive. Not repetitive, but like, it was just really drawn out to me, at least. There were too many characters, and I get that you're not supposed to remember all of them. But
there were a lot of characters.
Every chapter they introduced like 5 new names.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I ended up not finishing it. I got like maybe a little over, oh, my bookmark's still here. I got to page 346, and there are 497 pages. So yeah. I was close. And then I put it down. I said, Caleb, can you just tell me what happens at the end? And he did. And the ending seems interesting. I don't regret not finishing it. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is one of his favorite books, though. Now we have another romance book, of course. This is not a rom-com. This is just a strictly romance book. But like...
Oh, wow.
It's not even a strictly romance book. It's more of like a tragic literary fiction book that just so happens to have love in the beginning, like throughout the book, but it's not the main focus. It's called Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I feel like this is an underrated TJR book. A lot of people talk about her other books, but no one really mentions this one. I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I don't know why. I read this book so fast. I think I read it in like 2 or 3 days. So Elsie Porter and Ben Porter. They get married in the book. That's not a spoiler. It happens in like the first few chapters. I mean, basically he dies a month, I think, of them being married. And the book just goes through her grief period. It goes through her moment of meeting his mom, who she had never met before because they eloped. Again, this is all in the summary. I promise not spoiling. Very interesting because they had only known each other but for so long. And now he's just gone. And it goes through her whole processing of that because I hadn't even known this guy for so long, but we were married, so I feel like I've known him for a long time. It's that type of book. I really loved the characters, all of them. The girl, the boy, who, even though he died in the book, they still like talk a lot about flashbacks and like what he was like. And I really like the mom in the book too. And yeah, 5 out of 5. Also, if you read this book, just picture Ben Porter as Dylan O'Brien, because for some reason it just matched so well and made the book very enjoyable. Okay,
this book is called The Committed, also by Viet Thanh Nguyen. This is the sequel to The Sympathizer. I'm not gonna say much about what it's about because I don't want to spoil the first book, but it's a continuation of that story. I'll just say His writing stays the same, if not better. Touches on even more themes throughout this book. Another great piece of historical fiction, 5 out of 5. Like, both books were amazing. Can't recommend Viet Thanh Nguyen enough.
Look at how satisfying it is. The fact that they're inverted colors. Like that's dope. Shut aside. Look at that. I'm gonna talk about these next two together because it's a series.
Oh God.
I'm trying to make this short, but I feel very strongly about the series, so I have a lot to say. This is Chaos Walking. This is books 2 and 3. I read the first book literally in 2020, 2 years ago, and I just for some reason never got to the second and third book, even though I thoroughly enjoyed that first book so much. I think I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a little break from the series so that when I read the second book, it's gonna be like really refreshing. And then I just put it off for so long. Finally got to it. And here they are. This is The Ask and the Answer, and this is Monsters of Men. The first book is called Chaos Walking, The Knife of Never Letting Go. If you don't know the series, basically a trilogy about this town of men, and they can hear each other's thoughts, and it's called Everyone's Noise. And the book is centered around the main character, Todd, who was played by Tom Holland in the book, if you're wondering. That's the reason I found the series. Centers around him, and I'm only gonna talk about the first book because I don't wanna spoil the first book by talking about these two books. And he comes across this girl. It's the first time he's seen a girl ever because the story in that town is that all the women died from a disease, including his own mother, and the only thing he has left from his mother is a journal that he can't read because he doesn't know how to read. In the book, I think he's 13, so it's like from the point of view of a kid basically, and it was just so interesting and enticing to read. Like, I was hooked the whole entire time. Loved the characters. The author did such a good job of building the characters, of having such good character arcs, and I just really enjoyed this series. I wish the movie was better. The movie was trash, honestly, for anyone who's watched it. The first book is a 5 out of 5. I just want to put that out there, even though I didn't read it this year. Second book, 5 out of 5. Third book, I give it a 4 out of 5. Still good, but this was just better to me. I was just more hooked by this one.
Another book by Viet Thanh Nguyen. If I had mispronounced this from the beginning, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing it like 4 times. This book is actually, it's still fiction, historical fiction, if you will, and it's just a series of short stories. I think there's like 8 short stories and then 2 essays that he had written for, I can't remember if they were newspapers or magazines or journals or, anyway, just a series of short stories about refugees. These are all fiction, but I'm pretty sure they're based on a little bit of his experience because he was a refugee. He was, his family fled Vietnam or left Vietnam after the Vietnam War to come to America. So I'm sure a lot of his stories in here were based off some of his experiences or friends of his or family members of his. Great book. The stories are like, and yeah, again, his writing just shines through, and it's the star of the show in all of his books. You can appreciate the plot, you can appreciate the themes he touches on, but the way that he delivers, I think, is what makes his books all 5 out of 5s. And I look forward to reading more of his work that I'm sure is soon to come.
Okay, and now for my last book. We got one holiday rom-com to end off the
you did
year.
not like this book.
This is The 12 Days of Christmas. I was excited to read this book.
I got her this book as a Christmas gift because she specifically told me I want to read a Christmas rom-com during Christmas time. And actually, I gave it to her as a gift technically, but she picked it out herself. So I'm not to blame for
my fault
if she didn't like it.
This is by Jenny Bayless. She has a lot of other Christmas rom-coms. I think this was the first one she wrote.
That's such a niche genre.
I know.
Christmas rom-coms.
To give a summary of what this book is about, really quick.
A Christmas rom-com.
A Christmas rom-com. She goes on 12 dates of Christmas. It's like a little dating thing that they, like a dating program that they have in the town she lives in, where you get set up on 12 dates throughout Christmas time. And at the end, if you hit it off with one of them, then you both choose each other.
Okay.
You know exactly what's gonna happen at the end of this book within like the first chapter of this book. And yeah, that's like kind of a given with rom-coms, but it was just so plainly obvious that you didn't even get to have fun with figuring out who she was gonna end up with. And it made the like 12 dates of Christmas seem pointless. I also don't like the writing style that much. No dialogue. There's dialogue, but it's mainly like description of action. I woke up after my nap and I grabbed a cup of coffee, which was steaming hot, and I added 2 tablespoons of my creamer and sugar, and I drank all of it within 10 minutes. I went on to finish my work of designing, and then I went to the I get that you're trying to like set up her routine and like show what a day in her life is like, but I'm not watching a vlog. I don't need to know what she does when she wakes up in the morning. I don't know if I gave it a 1 or a 2. Can't remember. I didn't even write down what I gave it.
All right, give it now.
I'm gonna give it a 1.
A 1 out of 5.
I don't recommend reading this book. I'm sorry, Jenny Bayless.
The last book I have, Catherine can put up a picture, is The Silent Patient by, I think, Alex Michaelides. I can't remember his exact name,
Close
but
enough.
it was great. I read it in a couple of days. This book, real briefly, is a psychological thriller. It's about a patient who is silent. What is she silent about? She does not speak after she murders her husband, seemingly out of nowhere. And the book takes place from the point of view of a forensic psychotherapist, fancy for a therapist who deals with people who've committed crimes. Anyways, it's a great book. It's a thriller, so you're kind of hanging on the edge of your seat. I really love books with short chapters, and this is one of them. I give it a 5 out of 5. It's definitely popular because of Book Talk. It was a really great read.
And that is the end of our books we read in 2022. Caleb's gonna go take a break from talking so he can stop coughing now. Thank you so much for watching this probably super long video and listening to us review the books we read in 2022. And thank you to Caleb for joining me on this video. I really wanted him to talk about his books too. And so you get a good variety of the different genres, you know.
Honored to be here. So you get to hear about books that are not rom-coms or Christmas rom-coms.
Here's to New Year books and can't wait to read.